Okay. Okay. So welcome to our third Q&A of this group. So just as a reminder, I am doing this the first Wednesday of every single month at 7 p.m. So that's Mountain Time. I do record these sessions so that you can watch them later on in the month, or you can refer to them back again if you have questions. But just know that I typically will record these. I love the idea of people gathering together and having a conversation rather than me just blabbing for 45 minutes to an hour. So I would really like this to be interactive in a perfect world, but I get people have families and people have lives. And so I'm going to keep recording it, but just know, mark your calendars, the first Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, we're going to jump on. So as this progresses, we will have more opportunities to come together as a group and kind of problem solve some of these things that we're seeing in assisted living and seeing in the communities that we're serving. So let's dive in. So I like to do a poll a few weeks before the Q&A just to kind of know, like, where are we at? Like, what do we want to know about? So a couple of the things that popped up for me, and I just want to talk about billing first, billing and rates. If you are in some of the yoga groups online, there is a million questions about how much do you charge for a 60-minute class in your area? Or how much do you charge for a private session? How much do you charge? And I have to be honest with you guys. I bite my tongue over and over and over. I bite my tongue. I get that we have paid thousands of dollars to be trained. I get that. I get that we should be reimbursed for our time. I get that. I get that we should be reimbursed for our value. I get that. I'm not knocking the value of what we do. However, I do want to put the perspective in there that when you are working with a population of people that have disabilities, there is not an endless amount of funding, and people who don't understand the world of disabilities, whether that's physical disabilities or developmental disabilities, if you're not a caregiver or a family member of a person with a disability, you might not understand how it works. But oftentimes the way that it works is that there is a waiver involved, and the waiver comes from a federal government, sends each state a certain allocation of money. The state then decides the value of the money goes to certain individuals. It could also go to roads. It could go to parks. It could go to a million different things. So depending on your state governing body, that's going to be very different, varying state by state. So I live in Colorado, and although Colorado is a beautiful place to be, it's a great place to visit, it's a great place to live, services for people with disabilities is like the bottom 10 in our nation. So we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at billing. Like, a person with a disability is typically making, in my state, a person with a disability gets income, Social Security income of around $780 a month. 780. That check goes to their housing. They might get a small allocation to pay for things that they want. So they're getting food, so room and board. They're getting housing and food. They're not getting access to yoga, access to clothing, access to fun and games, access to the things that you and I enjoy. They're getting a minimal amount of money. Some of my students that I work with get anywhere from $25 to $50 per month for extras. So their lives are spent housebound. They rely on the agency to provide entertainment for them. Some of them take them to the movies, some of them don't. Some of them take them to community outings, some of them don't. So there's not an agency that I know, and I'm in 8 agencies in the state of Colorado. There's not one agency that I can think of that says, hey, let's give you some money to go to a yoga class in a studio. It doesn't happen. So with that perspective, with knowing that there is not just an endless supply of money for these individuals, and there's not an endless supply of money for the agencies. The agencies are providing room and board. They're also providing transportation to medical appointments, a staff member to accompany the person to the medical appointments. They're providing different therapies, different, some outings, like group outings. They go to, like, in Denver, we have a Denver Botanical Garden, or they go to the zoo, or they go on group outings. But there's not just this magical pot of money that says, hey, let's have the yoga teacher come in and teach some private adaptive yoga to a group of 5. It doesn't exist. So I chose years ago to start my rates incredibly low. This meant to me that I would have to hustle harder. I would have to work harder. I would have to teach more classes if I wanted to earn a valuable income as a yoga teacher. So I made that decision early on that my rates were going to be sustainable to the agency, not so much sustainable to me. It means that I teach a lot of classes to make a decent living at teaching yoga. It also means that more agencies get access to yoga than not. If I were to charge $150 per session, it is likely that most of my agencies would say that's outside of our budget, thanks anyway. Or the twice a month classes would be reduced to once a month. So I made that personal decision. It's totally your decision. But here's what I will caution after 16 years of doing this. If you put your rate at 150 plus, it is likely you will be denied. It was likely that the person that you're in front of, the activities director or the CEO of an agency, is going to say, I'm sorry, but that's outside of our budget. If you're working with an individual with a disability, somebody who has a traumatic brain injury or a developmental disability, it is highly likely that that person's guardian or representative payee is going to say, sorry, that's outside of his budget, his or her budget. So keeping that in mind, I recommend, if you want to do this kind of work, keep your rates reasonable. I don't charge for travel. I don't. Maybe it's not the best business decision, but if I'm going to be traveling 40 miles north, which is where I go, 40 miles, and I can get 5 or 6 homes done in that 40 miles, I'm not going to charge a travel fee for every single house. I just go, I just do the work. And I figure it all comes out in the wash. So I choose to keep my rates low. I have raised my rates over the course of 16 years, of course, with the inflation and things like that. But my rate, I will tell you, which I don't publicize often because people are like, oh my God, you're giving this away. I'm not giving it away. I charge $55 for a session. I learned early on to not call it an hour, not call it a half hour, but a session. So I charge $55 a session. That means I transport myself to the house or the agency or the facility or the community, whatever you want to call it. I teach for a session. If that session lasts 20 minutes, that's what it lasts. If the people in that home can only do 20 minutes, I charge 55. If the people in the home can do 60 minutes, I charge 55. It all works out. Then I might travel 10 minutes to the next house, $55, and to the next house. I don't know what that means, Lisa. So I don't know how to do that. Disabled participant screen sharing. I think that means, like, if you wanted to share a screen, like if you wanted to share your screen to me, I've disabled that. I don't know why I've disabled that, but I think that's what that means. So I think we're still good. As long as you can hear me, I'm going to keep going. So my rate is $55 regardless of how far I choose to travel or how close I choose to travel. $55. I started out back in the day, 16 years ago, at $35. And since then, I have incrementally increased my rate to 55. I feel like 55 is fair. It's fair for me. I teach a lot, I work a lot, I drive a lot, but it's fair to me. I know the world of people with disabilities. I know the income barriers that they have. I know the agencies while some people who are on the other side of the coin, skeptics, whatever, might say, well, yeah, but they're getting X amount of dollars per resident. They certainly should have a budget. That's not for you and I to decide. They're buying food, they're buying staff, they're buying bedding, they're buying furniture, they're buying activities, they're buying plans for the garden. It's not for me to decide how an agency is choosing to spend their money. I'm just grateful that I can walk through the doors and do what I need to do. So that's my billing. I bill at the end of every month. I send an invoice. I use Invoice to Go app. It's, I think, $110 a year. I send a monthly invoice. That works best for me. At the end of the month, I have a paper planner and I go through all of the classes that I teach and I bill each agency for every class that I was there. So if something happens, I have a medical appointment or it's something on me, I don't charge. If I show up to a house and they forgot I was coming and they went to the movies, I still charge them. If I get to the house and only one person wants to do yoga, I may or may not just charge a travel fee. I kind of play that by ear. So my travel fee is $25, which if I get to a house and only one person wants to do yoga or nobody wants to do yoga, if they're refusing, but they're all there, I charge a travel fee. If they know I'm coming and they choose to leave and go to Walmart or go to the movies, I charge $55. So I kind of fudge that a little bit depending on the situation, but my rate is $55. And then like I have a private student who lives an hour and a half from me. It is not the best business decision for me to go see him, but he's totally worth it. I've worked with him for 7 years. The family really wants me to be involved in his life. So I drive an hour and a half and I call on my way and say, hey, I'm on my way to see so-and-so. I'll be there in 45 minutes. I get there and they say, oh, we let him go back to bed. Well, once he's back to bed, there's no getting him out. I do charge the full rate. 1, because I called. 2, because that's the time slot that I'm designated to be there and his family wants me there. So I do charge for that and the family pays me and the family is fine paying me even though I don't provide the service because they want so badly for him to be seeing me that they're frustrated with the back end of how it works. So I kind of play it by ear. Like that's my rate and it just depends. Like it just depends on the situation. If I have to cancel for my own personal reason, I don't charge. Okay, so that's billing. I invoice at the end of the month on the 30th or 31st of every month. I send the billing department my invoice. I do it per day. So it might be 7-5 yoga at XYZ house, whatever they call the house, whether it's a number or the name of the street that they're on, and my $55. And then the next date is 7-12, whatever house number, yoga, $55. And then I differentiate it per location within the agency, and then I send it to the billing department. Typically, I get most of my agencies are direct transfers. So they receive my invoice. They have 14 days to pay me. Some of them are 30 days payout, but it's fine. They all pay within a month. Then they pay me direct deposit or a check. And then I just carry that over. Like I delete it off my invoice app and start over in the next month. But I bill at the end of the month. So I'm usually a month behind, but I've budgeted myself to where that works for me. So that's how I do it. I don't want to inundate an agency with a daily invoice or a weekly invoice. That just seems like it would get lost in the shuffle. So I keep track of everything that I teach. And at the end of the month, I invoice them $55 per session. I learned the hard way. I got burned the first few years because I was saying $55 per hour. And when the class only went 30 minutes, the agency wanted to cut my rate in half. No. It's per session because it's very dependent on the population that you're teaching. So that's billing. Get that out of the way. That's like the yucky part of business. Marketing is the other yucky part of business, but maybe we'll talk about that next month. So let's talk about students who have paralysis. And that is tricky. So the assumption that I made when somebody is paralyzed is that they don't feel their limbs. Not true. They definitely feel, most of them feel their limbs, that their brain is no longer connected to be able to move. So when I have a student who is paralyzed, either full paralyzation from the neck down, waist down, or bilateral, meaning one side of the body, I always ask them, can you feel my hands on your arm? Can you feel my hands on your leg? Do you have pain in that region? Do you have pain in your arm? Do you have pain in your hand? Do you have pain in your leg? Do you have pain in your foot? Once I get a general sense of whether they have sensation to the body part that's not working, then I know how to approach them. So I'll give you an example of one of the students that I work with who is paralyzed on the left side of his body. His hand is sort of frozen in this position, and he wears a brace to kind of open his hand to a flat position. But without the brace, he immediately goes right back to this super flexion. Okay, so when I go into the house that he lives in, he's able to walk with a quad cane, but he drags his left side. So knowing the hemispheres of the brain, his injury was on the right side of his brain, and it affected the left side of his body. So his hand is stuck like this, and his left leg is sort of just like a drag along. Okay. So he uses a quad cane. The interesting thing about this student is if he is speaking, he will not walk. He cannot do both things at once. So he's either talking to you or he's walking. If he's walking, the minute he needs to use language, he stops walking. So if he's in a hurry and he needs to get to where he needs to go, I don't talk to him. But I'm trying to work with him on doing both of those skills at the same time as he leaves the yoga class to go to his appointment, or he goes to physical therapy during yoga. He leaves halfway through and he goes to a gym. I'm trying to get him to multitask, which uses two different areas of the brain to be able to walk with his quad cane and respond to language. Super hard. But so for him, when I walk into the house, he's typically sitting in a chair. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what he's like. He's sitting in a chair. His right side is his able side. He uses his phone. He's usually texting madly on the right side, and his hand is kind of frozen like this. He has a heating pad over his hand to keep it sort of palatable, kind of movable. And then he has this brace that they put on him when he leaves. So when I show up, I sit on this side of him and I loop my hand into his, and I immediately just straighten his hand. So I'm sitting with his hand straight, and then I take my hand and I start to move his shoulder. Okay. So I always check in with him. Can you feel this? Is it uncomfortable? Does it hurt? He is one that does have pain. So if I push too fast to straighten his hand from this position to this position, he will say that hurts. So what I tend to do is his hand is stuck like this. I just smooth it a little bit. I just smooth it with my hand, just a little bit, until eventually his tone kind of softens. Okay. And then we're kind of holding hands. So my hand is looped through here. I'm sitting on this side and my hand is looped through here. Then I take my hand and I start to make some shoulder circles. And then I do the opposite. Then I'll take his elbow and I'll cross it over his chest. This is the entire time where we're checking in, we're talking, hey, what are you guys doing today? What have you done this week? How are you feeling? We do our mind, body, spirit check-in. I'm doing some motion, just range of motion. Okay. His hand goes right back to this. As soon as I let go, his hand goes back to this. So I smooth his hand, and then I take my hand and I just apply a little manipulation here. Okay. And then I put my hand right into the center of his palm, which will straighten his hand for the time that I'm holding it. The second I let go, his hand goes back to this. So what I'm doing in doing this is I'm providing just some tactile pressure to help lengthen the tendons that have been shortened by his paralysis. So I'm giving his body a tactile touch, but here's the most important part is I've built a sense of trust. Yes, kind of like biofeedback, Lisa. So I've built a sense of trust with him that I say, hey, You let me know if this doesn't feel good, but he does not get touch. Okay. So his touch is clinical. His touch is maybe somebody helps him get dressed, maybe somebody helps him shower, but not very many people are willing to hold his hand. Not very many people are willing to smooth out his fingers. I will rub his shoulder, rub his arm, and then do some basic range of motion. So taking a basic anatomy class that we probably should have taken in YTT will be enough for you to know range of motion. Our shoulder and our hip is the exact same joint. It's a ball and a socket. So my shoulder has a socket, it has a ball. Okay. So when people can come into like this wide leg forward fold flopped onto the ground or a full pigeon, their hip socket is shallow, which allows the ball to have free movement. Okay. It's not because they're more flexible. It's not because they're better at yoga. It's not because of any of that nonsense. Their socket is shallow. Okay. So if you have a deep socket, you're not going to be able to forward fold with your stomach on the ground in a wide leg forward fold. Not going to ever happen because you have a deep socket. You're probably not going to come to full pigeon and be able to flop your torso down. It doesn't matter. Okay. So knowing basic anatomy for this student's shoulder, he probably has a very shallow shoulder because I'm able to get full range of motion in his shoulder that's paralyzed. If he were to have a really tight shoulder socket, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. So here's kind of one thing to think about when we're talking about hips or shoulders in relation to a wide forward fold or a shoulder extension. So I probably have very shallow hips. Okay. So my hip socket allows my ball to move freely, which has caused me to have a little bit of trouble in my hips because I overextend. I have hypermobile joints. Here's one way to know. If a student can reach their arms above their head and have full rotation back, they probably have a shallow socket. Somebody who has a tight socket is going to get stuck here. And they're like, I'm terrible at yoga. I can't do this. No, it's not that. They have a tight socket. Okay, that's for a typical student. But we apply that to a person who has paralysis. To assume that they cannot feel because they cannot move is a big mistake. Okay, and I learned that the hard way. They can still feel. So I will grab my student's arm and I will roll his shoulder behind. It doesn't go very far, which tells me he probably has a really tight socket. So I move his shoulder for him. I move his hand for him. And then his leg is a little different story. Okay. So he wears a brace on his leg down at the ankle and the calf. So way down here, this leg is working. This leg is not. So I will pick up his leg and I will squeeze it in. Pardon my house shoes, my little slippers. And then I will lower it. So I'm getting some hip motion, right? I'm doing the work. I will also take a strap and loop it underneath his leg, hold on to the strap, which puts less strain on my body. So I'm lifting his leg, lowering his leg. Then we will make some hip circles. So I can either do hands-on, moving his hips, or I use a strap. Then we sit in sort of a configuration of leather furniture with a coffee table. I will pick up his leg and I will straighten his leg and put it on the coffee table. Okay, so now he's getting some hamstring stretch. I'll ask him to straighten his body and lean forward. He can feel that stretch in his hamstring where it attaches to the quad and to the glute, or to the knee and to the glute. So I guess what I want to just share with you when it comes to paralysis or a paralyzed student is don't assume that because they can't move it, they can't feel it. Always ask permission. Always say, I need you to talk to me. I need you to tell me if you feel something that's uncomfortable. The hands can come into sort of this really, I don't do both sides, Lisa, unless they're bilaterally paralyzed. So if they are paralyzed on both sides of the body, then I will do both sides. But if it's only a bilateral, if it's only one side of the body, They do the entire other side. So great question. So let's go through a quick sequence. This is a sequence that I do all the time. It's one that becomes familiar to the students and they feel good about it. So assuming I'm working with this young man whose name is Corey, I will say, all right, we're going to sit really tall and he will sit away from the couch. His hand is like this. Okay, it's on his lap, but I'm just going to show you. So I'm going to be Corey for a second. His hand is on his lap. It's configured like this. He's sitting like this. I will say, all right, hand on your heart. Let's take a deep breath. Blow out the candle. We're going to come into mountain pose. So I'm going to extend my arm. He does his right side. I will come around to the left side and I will extend his arm to the sky. So he's working his right side. I'm holding his left side. Take a big breath. Let's bend into cactus. I lower his arm. Here's his hand still stuck into this position. He does his right side. Let's become trees. Make the A-OK sign. This is the leaves of your tree. I don't worry about his left hand. He grows his right hand to a branch, and I'll say lift one leg. He independently lifts his right leg. Let's cross our arms and become birds. I cross his right arm over his left arm over his right. So his left arm that is paralyzed is on top of his right. He's able to independently lift his right arm to move his left. That becomes our bird. We're going to go back up to the mountain. He slips the hand off. I catch it. We back up to the mountain. I'm holding his left arm. Take a breath. And we're going to dive forward into a waterfall. Lean forward and attempt to touch your knees or your toes. He's going to take his right hand down to his ankle. I'm just going to let his left hand sort of drag down to his knee. After the waterfall, we come up to a star. I hold his arm and I straighten it as best I can. It's usually about here, but the other arm is here. He's a star. Then we grab the bow and arrow. I'm holding his left hand. We hook hands together. I'll say, take a breath, pull your right elbow back. He independently pulls the arrow back. I'm holding his left arm. Then I take his left arm to the sky. That is our bow. He's here. Take a breath, blow it out. We blow it out. I bring his hand to heart center. He hooks it together. Take a breath, blow it out. I open his arm. He opens his right arm. There's angel wings. Take a breath. I wrap his left arm over his right shoulder. He wraps his right arm over his left shoulder. Take a big breath. Blow it out. Love yourself. Bring your hands to your lap. I let his hand come down. Okay, so that's just a basic sequence that we do. So he's able to move his right side independently. Now, theoretically, if there are more than one person in the group with paralysis and I can't get to everyone, then each person is sort of on their own to do the body part that works. So inhale to mountain, exhale to cactus, inhale to tree, exhale to bird, inhale to mountain, exhale to waterfall, inhale to star, exhale to bow and arrow, inhale, pull the arrow. Exhale, look up, blow it out. Inhale, hands to heart center. Open your angel wings. Exhale. Inhale, give yourself self-love. Exhale, return your hands to your lap. That's our basic sequence. Okay, so I did it 100% right side only. Now, if I have somebody who's paralyzed on both sides, it's hard, right? So I usually will switch sides. So we'll do both. We'll do the sequence at least twice. Usually it's 4 to 6 times, but I will switch sides. If I have more than one person in the group that's paralyzed, I make my rounds. It's a lot of work. But if I can give that individual sensation of mountain, cactus, tree, it's hard to get flexion and extension in hands that are frozen. But I do my best, okay? The biggest thing I want to talk about paralysis is don't assume if it doesn't move, it cannot be felt. And also always ask permission. Some people don't want to be touched. Some people say, no, that's okay. Other people say, please, please, please open my hand. It's been frozen like this for 5 years. Open my hand. I spend the majority of many of my classes with somebody who's paralyzed into this position, holding their hand, resting my palm on their palm so that their hand is open, or I interlace my fingers so that they feel that human connection. And I know I talk about the 4 pillars a lot, but the 4 pillars, just to review: connection, community. Connection and community is number 1. That is the one pillar that the students want the most. And the number 1 way to reset the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, where we reset and digest, where we close trauma loops, where we find comfort, is to feel like we belong, to feel like we matter. So building community and connection is paramount, above asana, above movement, above a sequence, above modifying mountain pose. It is to have them feel like they matter. So slipping my hands into their hands means more to them than learning a sequence. Guarantee it. We move together, whatever that movement looks like. We breathe together, and then we're grateful together. Those are the 4 pillars: community, movement, breath, and gratitude. Okay, so that's how I work with somebody who is paralyzed. I use straps. I use other chairs. If I don't have enough hands on, if there's too many people in my group that have paralysis, I will use chairs, and I will lift their legs and put them on chairs. I'll put pillows under their arm just to get them from being here to being here, and look at that openness to the heart, just simply by propping their arms up on a pillow, okay? Or a couple of pillows or couch cushions. Like, use what's in the room. And bring blocks with you. The back of my car looks like craziness. I have blocks, and I have blankets and belts and straps, and I just bring it all with me. And if they're sitting on a couch and they're sitting like this, frozen in space, I bring pillows and I prop them up and look at that open heart. Okay. So ask permission, and don't assume if they can't move it, they can't feel it, because 9 times out of 10, they can very much feel their limbs, but they have no control between brain and body. So asking them to talk to you, tell them what hurts, what feels good. A lot of times just rubbing your hands along the front of their chest feels really good. I mean, we go to massage, right? We go to a yoga class at the end, and the teacher presses on our shoulders, and it feels amazing. Or when the teacher does this at the end of class, it feels amazing, right? They want that same opportunity to feel that release that you and I want to feel when we go to a yoga class. So don't be afraid to touch somebody who's paralyzed. Just ask permission and assume that they can feel what you're doing. And then talk to them, like, ask them questions. Does that feel okay? One of my students that I will tell you, she's a female, she's my age, she's a mom, she's a grandma like me. And it happened that I went to the house that she lives in, and it's all women, which I love, because the majority of the students I work with in the brain injury world are male. This is an all-female house, and it just happened that the other women in the house were at appointments, or they refused to work with me that day and didn't want to come to yoga or whatever. And so I was working with this individual, this woman who's my age, and she's had major trauma to her left shoulder. And so she was able to move her right shoulder, and we're doing all this crazy stuff: make a cake, make frosting, become a tree, become a cactus, let's be birds, let's open and close. But I wanted to work her left arm because she doesn't get a lot of motion and mobility. It's very painful to her. Her left shoulder hurts all the time, and she can raise her arm to about here, but then it becomes too painful. And she's afraid, because she's had 3 surgeries on her shoulder. She's a little bit fearful of overextending her arm. So I took her arm and I just started to make some small circles. And as I'm working the circles with her, I'm starting to make some crossing, just kind of getting some fluidity in the back of her body, opening through the front of the body. And I'm worried about the physical, like, does this feel okay? Are you okay? Talk to me. You doing okay? I'm doing great. This is great. And so in my mind, I'm thinking physical. Okay. I've been doing this a long time, but it still blows my mind. So I'm working her shoulder, doing all these range of motion, just basic range of motion. And I said, how does this feel? And she just looked at me and she says, like I matter. Like I matter. I'm thinking physically, how does this feel? Does it hurt? Does it feel good? Does it feel like sensation? Do you feel looser? Do you feel more flexible? I'm thinking here and she's thinking here. Like, yes, it feels like I matter. So in that moment, because I was touching her and I was moving her body for her and I was giving her attention and I was making her feel like she mattered, that's what she tuned into. So my advice is don't be afraid to touch people. Just get their permission. It is the mind-heart connection. It was so beautiful. And I tell that story a lot. Like, she's a beautiful woman who has had minimal physical touch since she was 20, when her accident occurred and she was hit by a car in a crosswalk. Life over in her world. Life over. Okay, so that's paralyzed. I've got notes. Let's talk about dementia. Dementia is a whole other beast. It's very, very hard. And I often say on Fridays is where I do the majority of my dementia work. I feel like a circus clown. I go in spinning plates, wearing a top hat, wearing a nose, a red nose, like squeaking, being a clown. But that's what gets them engaged. So the way that I have found the most success with working with people with dementia is to be vibrant, to be alive, to be in their face, to hold their hands, to talk to them, to not go in as a Zen yoga teacher saying, okay, friends, we're going to breathe together today. Like, that doesn't work. When I walk into a house that is primarily dementia, they're all sitting in recliners at 9 a.m., half asleep. So I bring a Pilates ball with me. It's just a soft, squishy ball. And I'm like, hey, Miss Joyce, can you hold this for me? And she holds it and she's squishing it. She has no idea what she's doing. And then I go to the next one and I say, hey, could you hold my hands for a second? Can I look at your eyes? Can I look at your eyes? Wait, hold on. Your eyes are blue. What color are my eyes? And I get as close to them as I can. And they say, your eyes are green. They are green. What else do you see? And then they say, like, I see you have red hair. You have a nose ring. Why do you have that? Whatever. But I'm connecting, right? Yoga is two pieces coming together in union. Then I grab the Pilates ball. I move it to the next person. Hey, Harold, hold this for me. I go to the next person. Like, hey, let me see your eyes. I'm doing a poll. I need to know how many people have blue eyes in this group. And I look at them and we look at each other's eyes. And then, oh, you have green eyes like me. That's so cool. What do you think about this top I'm wearing? And I usually wear something, colorful like this. This is just black and white. But I'm like, what do you think of this top? What colors are in this top? Tell me what you think about this. Look, it matches your pants. Do you want to wear my top? Okay, I'll bring it next time. I grab the ball. I go to the next person. There's usually 6 to 8 people with dementia living in one home. It's engagement, engagement, engagement. So then I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 4 things. This is the 4 things we're going to do. And then I'm out of here. These classes typically last 30 minutes max. Okay. And the agencies are okay with that because the people are engaged for 30 minutes. I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to move together. We're going to breathe together. We're going to talk a lot. And then we're going to be grateful together. So let's start talking. Hey, Miss Joyce, how's your mind? How's your body? How's your spirit? Oftentimes they have no idea. Mind's good, body's whatever, old. Spirit is, I don't know. Okay, cool. Harold, how's your mind? How's your body? How's your spirit? And I just fire these rapid fire questions, but they're on their toes, right? Because they're getting these questions asked of them. And I'm like, okay, today is Friday, June 25th. It's summer. What do we think about when we think of summer? Ice cream, lemonade, whatever they come up with. I'm like, okay, so let's just roll with it. Let's make some ice cream. And I start stirring the pot. What kind of ice cream should we make? You want to make sherbet? What goes in sherbet? Orange, lemon, lime. Okay, cool. What else should we make? Strawberry shortcake. Let's grab another spoon. It's so animated and it's so over the top. It's not like, okay, everybody, we're going to sit and we're going to come into mountain pose. It's not going to work with people with dementia. You have to be quick and fast and on it. Like I just think I'm just flying by the seat of my pants and I'm spinning plates and I'm circus performing. And at the end of the 30 minutes, I'm exhausted. And then I go to the next one. But they're engaged. And that's the most important thing, is they feel like they're doing something good. When we make a cake or a pie, a lot of times like we make lemon pie, whatever they come up with, like, all right, what's your favorite summertime dessert? Oh, ice cream, sherbet, strawberry shortcake, chocolate cake. Okay, cool. Let's make a cake. What goes in a cake? Flour, sugar, butter. Cool. What goes in frosting? Sugar, butter, vanilla. Cool. Let's mix them both together. Cake and frosting, cake and frosting. Okay. So what this does, and I've talked about this before, is it takes the midline of our body and it asks the hemispheres of the brain to work together. It's incredibly igniting for the brain, igniting for like being alert and being present and being focused, but it's also incredibly harmonizing, which means people are less dysregulated. They're less likely to have outbursts. They're more inclined to be peaceful. So anytime you can cross the midline, whether it's, hey, we're going to pick some apples. Let's make a blackberry pie. Let's make a blueberry pie. Let's pick some berries. Okay. So I'm crossing to pick the berries. And then I'm going to make a pie crust. I'm again crossing the midline. I'm leaning forward, leaning back, leaning forward, leaning back. I'm working both sides of that midline. And then we're going to throw a pie to the sky, a pie to the sky. I'm asking both body parts, both sides of the brain to be working at the same time. Lift a leg. Okay. So I use a lot of things that they know. They know how to make a pie. They know how to make a cake, which makes them feel confident. It taps into their memory center of their brain. It gives them something to talk about what they know. They don't know what day it is. They don't know what season it is. They don't know what year it is. They don't know who the president is, but they know how to make a pie or a cake. So I link into that and it comes out and they feel confident. So always we're making pies or cakes. Okay. I'm animated. I'm in their face. I say, hey, hang on a second. Can you hold my hands for a second? Okay. Breathe with me. Watch me. Blow it out. And I'm holding their hands like they mean the world to me. And we take about 3 or 5 breaths together. They have tactile connection. They have connection of my eyes. They have a connection of my spirit. They're breathing with me. Then I go and we do something else. And then if somebody's off in La La Land or they're wandering and they're wanting to leave the group, I just say, hey, I need your help. Can you hand everybody in the group one of these straps? I always bring a bag of straps with me, even if we never use them, but it gives them something to do. So I'll say, hey, Diane, will you give everybody a strap? And so she's taking the bag of straps and she's engaging with her housemates. I have one woman who does want nothing to do with yoga, but I give her the bag of straps and I say, Dixie, can you fix these for me? And she spends the entire 30 minutes rolling them into perfection. That's her yoga. And that is okay. She's doing something. She's engaged. So dementia is a whole other beast. It's a whole other topic. And what I will say is the more animated you are and the more tactile you are, the better you are going to be able to pull them in. If you're standing across the room and expecting them to listen to you without being in their face and touching them and saying, I love your green pants. Do you think your pants would go with my shirt? What do you think about my shirt? Do you think this shirt matches my eyes? Tell me what you think about my earrings. And I show pictures of my dog and my grandkids, and I am in their face, but that gets them to be in my face. And totally. You cannot rate your success on whether or not they're smiling or talking or anything. Like A lot of people with dementia are very flat affects. They don't have the facial expressions that you and I have when they're excited or happy or engaged. So you can't assume that because they have a blank face that they're not listening, then they're not engaged. You have to treat each person, even if they're not communicative, as if they are. Yes. Yes, they will seem disengaged. And then all of a sudden, what comes out of their mouth is like, oh my gosh, they're totally paying attention. So dementia is a whole different beast. It's hard. It's so beautiful though. I had a couple of women last month tell me, you know, this is what this woman said. She goes, people are always just busy doing, but nobody ever really makes you feel like you matter. And I have a lady who I jokingly, with all respect, call her Crooked Carol because her wig is like always crooked. And it's a wig from probably 1970. It's a beehive. And she wears it every time I see her, and it's always crooked. And so I just kind of nickname, and that's how you keep track of people, is like Crooked Carol or whatever. And she says, when you come, I feel like somebody's talking to me, like I matter, and I feel like I learned something. And she says, you make me think. So I've talked about theming before. I theme for my month. And whether you are a typical 30-year-old mom who's coming to my studio for classes, or you're an 80-year-old with dementia, you're going to get the same theme. Like, I'm not recreating the wheel for 50 some classes a month. You're going to get the same theme. So whatever I teach to a typical person, you're going to get with dementia. And I just modify it to a simpler form, or I just change it a little bit. But the theme is the theme. Like, month of July is freedom. Where do we have freedom? We only have freedom in our thoughts. All of us have lack of freedom in our bodies, whether it's from pain or environment, or we have somebody in our home that we have to care for, or we can't just get up and leave for the weekend. We don't all have freedom in our physical form. We also don't have freedom in our speech. We think we do, but we can't just say what we really think, because otherwise we wouldn't be successful or people wouldn't like us. The only freedom we have is in our thoughts. So that every student I'm in front of gets the same theme: freedom. So this month we're talking about freedom, which means our movements are going to be big. We're going to spread our wings. We're going to fly. We're going to make circles. We're going to have freedom in what we do in our bodies. And it's going to be exploratory and big. So in a typical class in my studio, we're going to do a lot of half moon, and we're going to take flight and airplane and warrior three, and we're going to play with some standing balances. And in my dementia class, we're going to make big circles like we're swimming in the ocean of Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico, and we're free and we're laying on a surfboard. And in the TBI classes, we're going to have freedom from these monsters in our head that make us feel like we're not good enough anymore. It's all the same theme. It's just changed for the audience that I'm in front of. So yes, dementia and TBI and any neurological condition is going to be looking a lot like other neurological conditions, and you meet them where they're at, and you pull strategies from your personal experience to meet them. You use, maybe you have an aunt who used to have a neurological condition, or a child, or a neighbor, and you just pull those experiences into your teaching and make it applicable and make it meaningful to them. Dementia's fun, but it's really hard. I typically teach 4 to 5 on Friday, and I'm exhausted, and they're only 30 minutes, but it requires so much energy on the teacher's part to keep those 6 people engaged for 30 minutes. And that goes back to self-care. Like, what are we doing as teachers to take care of ourselves? For me, I know that the thing that works best for me is I teach a class, I walk around the block. I teach a class, I walk around the block. I walk a lot. I get a lot of steps in a day, because that's what resets my spirit. I can walk outside in nature. I give it back to universe. I give it back to God. I say, holy crap, that was really hard. Or I cry, or I celebrate, or I laugh, or I'm happy. And then I go on to the next one. So having a practice after you teach is so important, whether it's light a candle, say a prayer, go for a walk, journal about it. You have to discharge that energy from your spirit. Otherwise, it will consume you. And I say often, I'm so grateful. I'm not an empath. I'm empathetic. I can sit with somebody else's pain and see them and be there, but I don't carry it. And I'm grateful for that. If you are an empath, you have to have an even better practice of not carrying that home. Okay. So finding what works for you. In the beginning of my teaching, it was light a candle at the end of my day, see every person that I saw, take a breath, blow out the candle, discharge that energy. I often take a shower at the end of my day and I visualize washing away the parts of my students that don't serve me, the hard parts, the traumatic parts, the painful parts, the trauma parts. I don't want to carry that with me in my spirit. I want to take the great stuff and use it to be a better person, but I can't carry their trauma with me. It's not healthy. It's not useful. It doesn't help me to be the best person that I can be for my family or my students. So I found that walking, showering, taking a big exhale at the end of every class. When I get to my car, I will literally go, and I'm blowing out that energy. And then I will go for a walk. Rain, snow, sleet, ice, I walk. Even if it's just around a block or up and down the street, I walk. And that's my way of mentally saying, I did my work. I'm done. I'm ready for the next. And then on my days that I don't teach, filling up myself with what serves me. And it varies seasons. You know, right now I'm in garden season. I'm growing amazing veggies. That fills me. In the winter, I love to crochet. It's like a meditation in motion. Walking is something I do every day, bathing, showering. Just find what works for you, because working with this population is very, very, very hard. And you don't often get the feedback from a typical student that you would like, wow, amazing class. I feel so good. Oh, you made me cry. Oh, that hip opener was amazing. Or, oh, the back bend. You don't get that. So just trusting that what you're giving is making a difference in their life, and seeing those little glimmers of eye contact, or glimmers of a smile, or glimmers where they hold your hand a little tighter. That's validation. And then doing something for yourself so that you can continue doing it is huge. And not getting caught up in, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is it pretty enough? Is it right enough? Am I doing enough movement? I say this a lot, and I'm probably not the most popular person in a yoga group, but movement, or asana, is the least important part of this practice for your students, in my opinion. And I could be wrong, but it is the least important part. The most important part of this type of work is helping them feel like they matter, and that they belong, and that their life has meaning, and that what they contribute to you and the world is important. And however you pull that out of them, whether it's making a cake and frosting, or having a sequence that's mountain, cactus, tree, bird, waterfall, bow and arrow, or if it's stretching their leg with a strap, or if it's you hands on hands moving their body for them, whatever it is that gets them to feel that they matter and that they're important, that is what the magic sauce is. So I encourage yoga teachers to think away from asana and more into union, and whatever that looks like. I often put my hand on somebody's heart and just say, watch me breathe. Breathe with me. And blow it out. And that's our yoga practice. And that is okay. So I'm kind of broadening this group from yoga teachers only to mental health workers, psychologists, social workers, counselors. people who are wanting to provide a holistic approach to working with these populations, because I feel like the culture of Western yoga, for the majority, not for several people, hundreds of people, the majority is that they want to teach in a studio where it's pretty. And it's just not the work that's where it's needed for these populations. So I'm trying to kind of find broader people to bring into this horse and pony show, because I feel like there's such a need in every single community. Every single community in the nation has people with disabilities, and there's not enough people who are reaching them. And I don't think that just thinking that yoga teachers need to be the people to reach them is going to work. So I'm opening sort of this forum up to mental health workers, social workers, psychologists, counselors, family therapists, people who want to provide a holistic approach to working with people with disabilities, because I'm on a mission and I want every community in every city, every county, every little towny town to have access to this type of work. So just keep sharing the word, keep spreading the word, keep thinking, how can I bring this to my community? I'm here to help you. I want to help you be successful. I'm happy to help you market what you have. I know I have an online document that I send agencies. I'm happy to help you make that. It takes me no time at all to make one. I can sit down with a Zoom call and help you make one. I want to help you be successful. I want the world to have access to this type of work. So I'm on a mission, and I appreciate you being here to help your community find this kind of work. And the more people we can get involved. So if you know people who are yoga teachers or mental health workers or people who just want to get it, I'm happy to help train them along the way to become somebody that can go into an agency and do this kind of work. It's really important to me that more people in more communities get access to oneness and unity and union, and to feel whole. Like, people with traumatic brain injuries, I think, don't feel whole. People with dementia have lost a huge part of their life. And if you and I can bring wholeness to them, that's what we're here to do. So that's what I'm here to do. I am grateful that you're here with me. If you have questions, please ask me. I don't know everything, but I would love to help find a solution to whatever challenge is coming up in your population, your county, your country, your city. I've got some Canada people here, and let's talk about it. Let's just keep the conversation going. I want to learn from you. And so I'm going to end the recording. So Lisa, thanks for popping in, and I'll post this in the group, and let's just keep it going. Let's keep talking about it. And I'll be back the first Wednesday in August at 7 p.m. And hopefully we'll have some other people join. And I'm just going to stay the course. One of the things I've learned about this business is consistency is where it's at. And if we give up because it's hard, or we give up because not enough people are engaged, then we're going to miss out. So I'm in it for the long haul. It took me years to build a business, and it will certainly take me years to build a Facebook community of like-minded people to go out there and do God's work. And I'm not going to give up. So yes, and people are traveling. It's just a busy time of year. So keep that in mind. But let's just keep talking about it. And so I'm going to end the recording, and then I will post it on YouTube, through YouTube, onto the Facebook group. And keep the questions coming. Like, Lisa, you asked some great questions. So you're amazing. And I so appreciate your support and your enthusiasm. You are a like-minded sister in many, many ways. And I'm grateful that our paths have crossed. So let's just keep talking. And I'll talk to you soon, Lisa. And for the rest of you guys, let's ask questions. Let's keep the conversation going. And I'll see you soon. So watch for this to be posted, and I'll talk to you soon.